as long as I've been involved, which is starting in 1994, when ironically I was acting as counsel for Health Canada against the herbalist. That was my first experience with this issue. And then the following year, I started my own firm, and that herbalist hired me, and we were successful. And then it was a small community back then, and people talked. And before you knew it, half my practice was, running interference for companies that Health Canada was trying to shut down. And we had no regulations because our Food and Drug Act and drug regulations were never intended for natural products. But Health Canada hates them and wants to regulate them the exact same way as chemical drugs. And in that way, we won't have effective ones on the market. We'll have ineffective vitamins and minerals in amounts that are non-therapeutic. So Health Canada brought in tried to impose on the natural health product industry these really over-the-top fines and powers that literally could be used to destroy any practitioner or company that would resist them. And so there was the largest citizen rebellion in living memory on this issue in 2008. Now then, these exact same powers and penalties come into law in 2014, but they don't apply to natural products. They only apply to the chemical drug companies. They called it Vanessa's Law. So remember that story with Terrence Young and his daughter Vanessa, who died of a pharmaceutical drug for a non-serious health condition, and he became passionate about this. Now, that was all a little dishonest because they were pretending like these were new powers and penalties being imposed on the chemical drug industry in response to Vanessa's story. But no, the exact same powers and penalties Health Canada had tried to get in 6 years earlier under Bill C-51. So that was a bit of a PR fraud, but no one could resist it because of the, what wonderful marketing. And really nobody cared that you were going to bring in stricter penalties for companies like Pfizer. Like, I don't care, like up the penalties to $5 billion a day for Pfizer. But they're totally inappropriate penalties for natural health companies and practitioners. So one of the things that I've been doing recently, my law practice is almost non-existent because I've been volunteering with the NCI for so long. But I've been helping some naturopathic doctors that Health Canada is trying to shut down their truthful advertising on some natural products. And I've been doing this type of thing for years because Health Canada wants to censor truthful health information. I think it's important for us to know that the Food and Drug Act and our drug regulations have nothing to do with health. I challenge anyone to read them and show me where Health Canada is charged with protecting our health or having good health outcomes or even acting in the public interest. It's a criminal law act. It's under the federal's criminal law power. It has nothing to do with health. It's there to protect intellectual property rights as far as drugs go. But this is all part of an initiative of Health Canada's that they call the self-care framework. And this is just their latest marketing ploy to justify, marketing us the same as chemical pharmaceutical drugs. But other planks of this self-care framework include actually harmonizing how the regulation of natural health products with chemical drugs. So now to do this, they're actually doing two things. So they're relaxing the standards. They're making it easier for the chemical over-the-counter drugs to be licensed, which is very interesting because even though they're over-the-counter, they don't require a prescription. They carry a really high risk profile. But they're relaxing the standards to get the chemical drugs approved and then making the standards, the regulatory burden on the natural health product industry much higher because it's moving up to this chemical drug standard. And then also they're imposing cost recovery. So right now, a natural company doesn't have to pay for a site licensing fee and doesn't have to pay an application fee to get a license and the like. But they're imposing this on the natural health product industry. And by their estimates, and they're saying, well, wait a second, this doesn't include a whole bunch of different fees, and it doesn't include the increased cost of the companies for complying. but they're estimating in the first year $118 million imposed on the industry. And they're going to use those funds to create a new enforcement arm to basically make sure there's full compliance, and then to actively go out in the marketplace and censor truthful health information. Now, when you increase the prices for the products that do remain, you've increased the number of people that can't afford them. Like already, I mean, natural health products and, treating serious health conditions where you're having to see a natural health practitioner regularly, that's a middle class privilege. It's not something that poor people can do now. To get a license, to get permission to be on the market, you have to prove that the product is safe and you have to prove that it's effective. Can I tell you a funny story about safety? And I'll get on to how silly this whole thing is with risk later, but years ago, Nature Sunshine was trying to get encapsulated parsley approved. So, the parsley you buy in the vegetable section of the store, the produce section, they would dry it and grind it up and put it in a capsule. And parsley actually has some real health benefits. And Health Canada agreed, you've proven to us the health benefits, but you haven't proven to us that parsley is safe. Because don't you know, nobody has done any safety studies on parsley. Who knew, right? So they actually couldn't get a license for encapsulated parsley because they couldn't prove that it's safe. And eventually they shamed Health Canada with a political campaign. But it's just kind of how silly this goes. But we can use, on the efficacy side, we can use traditional use evidence to get a license. So, I mean, think of the traditional Chinese practitioners. There's literally thousands of years of traditional use evidence, because under the self-care framework, Health Canada has made it clear we will not be able to use traditional use evidence for efficacy claims. So what's going to happen to the products that naturopathic doctors use? Just using them as an example, if we can't use this licensing scheme that we could use before. And the whole thing is crazy in the first place. Why are we requiring Health Canada permission to use substances that are in our food supply? So the whole problem is this legal philosophical basis in the Food and Drug Act. So the starting point is that anything for therapeutic purpose is illegal. We're talking life and death issues. Now, products like Strauss and products like Empower Plus, these life-saving products, they're no longer developed under our natural health product regulations. Before we had regulations where the whole industry was illegal, you could get away with selling an unlicensed products because that's all they were. So you could develop these life-saving products. If they didn't work, they just disappeared. No one would buy them again, and they disappeared. There was a lot of trial and error in the marketplace. But now you don't develop these products because the stores won't sell them. You don't have and you could never get them licensed. So we've lost that innovative pipeline. And to get licenses, a lot of people had to drop the amounts. Health Canada says you have to drop the amounts, and they became less effective or not effective at all. So there's already been a lot of death and a lot of suffering caused by our regulations, and we're just going to make it worse. I really invite everyone to get involved, so plug into our network and get involved in these initiatives, because it's only going to work if we have a citizens' rebellion. And you can't be afraid to meet with your MP. You can't be afraid to call your MP. This is life and death for your family. And you know what? Those young men that we send to war, they're afraid, but they fight because they have to. And you have to. You're being sent. This is why you're here. This is why God put you here, is for this moment. And this moment is the one where you decide who you're going to be.